I think we have officially 23 candidates as of today. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good evening. It's good to be here. It's good to see so many familiar faces. Councilwoman, Senator, my colleagues in the Assembly, David Webber, Mary Prudential, Paul Vallone, and all the clubs for coming out on this very cold evening. David Markel, Lauren Schreiber, all my good friends are here, and Tammy too. I see you there hiding. But I'm glad I can have this opportunity because I grew up, a few minutes away from here. I went to PS20, PS32, and I just, as an immigrant that came here at the age of 7 in 1987, I'm a product of Queens. I'm a product of local public schools. And if it wasn't for that ESL teacher back in PS20 who taught me how to speak English, like I wouldn't be here today. So I have the fondest memory of growing up in this neighborhood. And also a lot of hard lessons. My parents worked at a 24/7 grocery store in the Upper East Side. They commuted back and forth, working at a small business. I remember growing up, and I used to get on a bus, one of those big yellow buses on Roosevelt Avenue, to go to PS32. It was such a nice neighborhood. As an immigrant, when you come here, you see the nice houses. This is what you remember seeing on TV when you come here. And I remember on the weekends, my parents would come by and take pictures. This is what we did, literally take pictures in random strangers' lawns because they just thought the houses were so beautiful. And someday they wanted to save up and have a house like that for themselves. And unfortunately for people like my parents, they never got there. Their small business didn't do that well. They filed for bankruptcy in 1996, I believe, and I was just about to go into high school. And that really left an indelible mark for me growing up. Like, what did we do wrong along the way where all these small business owners are constantly struggling, all these immigrants that are coming here to buy homes and start a business, and what do we have to do better as a community, as a city, as a state? And that really propelled me to take this journey to run for public advocate. Because my platform is to once and for all to put the interests of people like us over the big corporations that have benefited along the way for the last 40 plus years. By design, we've been giving away so much money to bigger corporations while people on the ground are constantly neglected. When we have conflicts with, we're talking about homeless shelters, or when we have conflicts with bike lanes, when we have conflicts with airplane noise, these are all everyday issues that people in this part of Queens care about. But when was the last time Mayor took a walk around this part of Queens to actually listen to the people on the ground and their concerns? And you tell me. When was the last? Never. Right, and he got
told off.
It was there for like 5 minutes.
Right.
Got chased down. Right. We need more citywide candidates running for public advocate, controller, mayor, to pay attention to the needs of Queens. And then we have unique issues. And oftentimes when people hear about stuff like airplane noise out of boroughs, they're like, oh, you guys are, I don't know what you're talking about. That's a dumb issue. Why are you talking about airplane noise? You know what? When my kids are going to school and the actual classroom is shaking because airplane noise downtown Flushing, that is a real issue. That is detrimental to my kids' health. I have a 4-year-old and a 2-year-old and a newborn, 3 young daughters, and my wife and I care very deeply about the quality of life and the future of these neighborhoods. That is a prime example where we have prioritized the efficiency of how many times a plane can come in and out, in the most efficient pattern, instead of focusing on, am I up or is that a doorbell? Okay. Instead of really focusing on what people care about on the ground, the noise, the health, all this stuff adds up to the detrimental impact of our everyday lives, and we should really, and those are the issues that often get neglected for people who are running for citywide. But in conclusion, again, this is all because by design we allowed ourselves to let the bigger corporations and mega corporations take as much much money from us, from our communities, that we're fighting, we're dealing with congestion pricing. We're almost normalizing the financing of our MTA and our structures off of working and middle-class families. Now, we should never be in that position. Why having starved our subways and our housing and our infrastructure for decades, and now in the back end, we're trying to get that money from everyday people. And we should never be in this position to begin with. And I want to have those tough conversations to find new revenue streams, to hold companies accountable, to make sure that they can finance the future of Queens and New York City. Thank you. My name is Ron Kim, ronkim.nyc. Please come by and ask me questions afterwards as well. Thank you. Okay. All right, we'll take some questions. Yes, sir.
Hi, Ron. My concern is with all the people running for this office that doesn't have a lot of statutory authority. How would you use the limited authority of this office to be effective, and how would you change the office to give it more authority?
Sure. And this speaks to my platform, putting the needs of people over corporations. Right now, in our neighborhood, I was just talking to a couple of young lawyers. There are more young people, and including people, older adults, living with debt than ever in the history of I know you're shaking, do you have that, sir, or are you shaking your head? Okay. 1 million New Yorkers right now struggle with student debt. These are people in the 30s, 40s that should be in a place to buy homes, move forward, buy a car, form their families, but they can't move forward because of this debt. 18 straight months of household debt. This is something that no one is talking about, but we are about to go into another economic recession or crisis. I am running to transform this office to exclusively designate an entire office to focus on writing down and canceling people's personal debt, distressed debt. We do it all the time for big corporations. In fact, they get a tax write-off for writing down debt every single day. But us, what we do, we often shame each other. If there's a student who's not paying off debt, all we do is say, hey, you should get a better job and you should work harder. That's all we do to each other. But there aren't enough good jobs right now. The wages are stagnant. People, even if you work in 2-3 jobs, the students in their 20s and 30s are in a lifetime of this type of debt. And I'm the only candidate pushing this issue because this is a crisis that we need to fix. If we don't, it's going to spiral out of control, and we're going to be facing another gigantic crisis. And I can use this office to push the federal government to help write down this debt, reform student debt and other forms of debt. And if they don't want to do it, there's actually a law that we can use. We've done it in 50 other cities. We can exercise eminent domain to go into neighborhoods that have some of the most distressed debt and help them write it down or monetize it in a better way. Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if I'm supporting, but I know I'm not supporting. I understand who I'm supporting, but I can tell you I'm not supporting Melissa Moss. I can't pronounce her last name, because of her support of wanting to honor Oscar Lopez Rivera during the Puerto Rican Day Parade 2 years ago. So I want to know, would that be a stance you would take it as a city official? Would you want to honor someone like that?
Okay.
What was the question?
So you're not, I think he's saying that he doesn't want to support any candidate because she honored someone at a Puerto Rican parade.
The terrorists who tried to blow up New York City.
Okay. Oscar Lopez at a Puerto Rican parade.
It was the Grand Marshal.
Grand Marshal. And you're asking me if I would honor him at the parade. I don't think I would honor him at the parade, but okay.
Anywhere.
Okay, that was Stitch Up.
Hi, John Feely, president of the Clinton Democratic Club, and a lot of people that belong to the Clinton Democratic Club come from the College Point area, and you're very aware of the situation that actually the two elected officials standing to my side, and our constituents have been fighting about how this homeless shelter has gone in with no transparency and with such confusion, and I wouldn't even use, confusion is a nice word, but the fact of the matter is that they're jamming it down our throats in a very non-transparent way. How can you help us with the public advocate to remedy that situation?
Well, I would call out the mayor on what he's doing, and then pitting our communities against each other and finding a place in the middle of, across the school, right? That's where he identified. I would put my foot down and make sure that he hears us loud and clear. That's what the Office of Public Advocate is supposed to do. I would stand with you, Paul, because this is completely. I mean, we have to take care of people who are in need, but to build these places where a couple of these donors are actually making money off of these development sites with absolutely no openness or transparency is ludicrous. I mean, the city council, the local members should be at the front and center of all these discussions from the beginning, not at the back end. But we're seeing a pattern of this. It's top-down, unilateral decisions, especially in our outer boroughs. And we're sick and tired of it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Very much, Assemblyman. We've been joined by two other candidates. But I would like to acknowledge the club presidents in the room: Jeff Cohn from the JFK Club, Billy Knopf from the New American Coast, Warren Schreiber from the FDR, Chuck Apillion from the Clinton Club, and Kevin Forrestal from the Queens Civic Association. And at this time, it is my great pleasure to introduce Assemblyman Danny O'Donnell.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Danny O'Donnell. I'm going to tell you my story. The grandchild of immigrants who came from Ireland because they were Catholic, they were not allowed to work. I was born in Flushing Hospital. When I grew up on Long Island, when I was 12 years old, my mother died of cancer very quickly. And we, 5 of us, were left alone. My father sought to drown his sadness in alcohol, and we were left alone. I had to cook Thanksgiving dinner when I was 13, because if I didn't cook it, I wouldn't have it. And so it's absolutely incongruous that I'm standing here today, because there was no path to this out of my family. But the city of New York saved my life, because they founded a law school at CUNY in 1983. I went to the second graduating class at CUNY. And when I left there, I didn't go to Wall Street and make money. I went to Legal Aid Society and represented poor people for 7 years. But that's not the only way that the city saved my life. 40 years ago, I met someone and fell in love. And that person is a man. And in 1980, it wasn't safe in many places in America to be in a relationship with a same-sex couple. And New York afforded John and I the opportunity to be together and make a life for ourselves. I joined Community Board 9 in West Harlem for 7 years. Then I ran for the Assembly. I was told, you can't be a politician because you're gay. You'll never get elected. And guess what? The people of my neighborhood elected me. And when I got to Albany, I went to work. Worked hard. Wrote and passed the Marriage Equality Law. Wrote and passed the Dignity for All Students Act, which recognizes trans people for the first time. I did those 2 things, and I did other things as well. Became the corrections chair because I'm the expert on criminal justice in Albany. I went to 38 state prisons over 4 years. And as I like to say, you can't take the IRT to Attica. Okay, these are very, very far away places. So why am I running for public advocate? Well, 1, I've been an advocate my entire life, advocating primarily for people who don't have a voice. 2, I'm running for public advocate because I'm not running for mayor. Very important. Many people want this job to step to the next job. I am not doing that. 3, I am independent. How am I independent? I owe nothing to the governor. I owe nothing to the mayor. I didn't endorse the governor for re-election. If you think that was easy, I'm telling you it's not. I have the battle scars to prove it, but I am beholden to no one. What's wrong with this city? Real estate development money has overtaken our city. We cannot fill in every piece of land with a high-rise and cement. We can't do it. It will destroy us, and it will destroy the future of our city. How do you need to be independent? 3 years ago, the mayor sent a letter to all the elected officials. Won't you please sign this letter asking Amazon to come to New York? I read that letter, Had no details, didn't say how it was being paid for, didn't say what they were getting, didn't say whether or not we put it into school, didn't say they were going to fix the subways. I said, I'm not signing this. It's like writing a blank check. So guess what? Bunch of my colleagues, not Ron Kim, wherever he is, he did not. Toby didn't sign either, that's why I can count on you, Toby. I didn't sign that letter. Melissa Margarito signed that letter. Michael Blake signed that letter. Jimmy Van Braber signed that letter. They signed the letter, and now they're pissed off because they're coming. That's like inviting someone to your wedding and being angry when they show up, okay? You invited them to come here, okay? So, there are a number of things that you can do, and I have experience doing. A, I'm an attorney, I think that's important. B, the first bill I put in is to give the office subpoena power. Why is that important? Because that's the way you get to the heart of the problem. Does anyone remember a man named Vito Lopez? Okay, I was the guy responsible for investigating his claims of sexual harassment against him, okay? And so in 6 weeks, in full compliance with the EEOC guidelines, we sanctioned him for sexual harassment, and he was thrown out of office. The second most powerful Democrat in the state, and I was unafraid to take him on. So I have used subpoena power, and I know how to use it, so that's the first thing we need to do. The second thing we need to do is look at overdevelopment in a variety of ways. You can't raise the zoning limits and then ask developers to build something good. You have to lower them, and then if they want to build above them, you have to get permission. That's the way to do that. Now, I served on a community board for 7 years in Harlem, and I lived through the expansion of Columbia and other universities, and I know how difficult it is. But we can't build the Amazon city on the water of Long Island City with climate change and think that we can sustain that. We need to have a sustainable plan to move forward. I just came from another forum. Dawn Smaltz is here, my friend. She was there too. I like to tell people I should be elected because I'm the funniest, just so you know. And what does a public advocate take? It takes somebody who's a loudmouth and unafraid. Now let's cut to the chase. I come from a loudmouth family. I understand that, that's the way it is. But in the end, that's the person you need. Someone who's willing to say no to the mayor, say no to the governor. The willingness to conduct investigations against the most powerful people in our city without fear of retribution. I've done all those things. I have the longest history in this race. I've been an elected official for 16 years. I never wanted this office. Never wanted this office. And then we had a presidential election. And I realized executive power in this country is running amok. The governor, the mayor are guilty of it too. But we're lucky in the city of New York, we have a city charter mandated role for someone to be that ombudsman watchdog. And I'm the most qualified person to do that. Thank you very much. I'm Danny O'Donnell.
What's your view on Rikers Island? That's one of the biggest problems in the city. People want it staying open, but the politicians want to close it.
Well, I believe it should be closed. And I can tell you why I believe it should be closed. I was a corrections chair for 4 years. I was a legal aid lawyer for 7. And I know what goes on there. And so what needs to happen is it's a physical structure that is crumbling around it. And so it's dangerous partially because you can literally pull parts of the wall off to create a knife. So we need to find a better way to do that. The amount of money we spend and the amount of time we spend taking people from Rikers to the Brooklyn courts where I worked is a huge waste of time and money. Now what I don't think we should do, I see you don't agree with me, but I'm going to tell you the truth. This is what I think.
You're allowed.
Okay, well, you asked. I want to finish what I'm saying. Where they put them and where they go is something that needs community input. What's wrong with the Amazon plan? What's wrong with the homeless shelter problem? I know that problem. I live across the street from one. So I know exactly what the problem is. And part of the problem is not consulting with communities. They should have gone to Long Island City and say, what do you want us to happen here? Rather than coming in and telling them this is what you're going to put there. And so there must be a better way to do that, and I don't think they should impose that on any community. should talk to communities about how to do this better.
Here, here.
Okay, Mr. Forrestal, and then you.
A follow-up question on Rikers, and if you allow me, I'll ask a general question. A follow-up question on the Rikers issue. How, by changing, not taking down Rikers, say, replace Rikers on the island, why would that be different, since nothing has been done since the proposal was made, or years before, with all the abuses at Rikers, at the Brooklyn House of Detention, and the Manhattan House of Detention, and the C groups in the Bronx? There's abuses there. There's been no reform. Why would you think that since no reform has been made, if you just move the troubles to another borough, you're going to miraculously solve the problem? And the other question, if you have time, could you comment about congestion pricing?
Certainly. I'll take the first one first and the second. It's not going to miraculously solve anything. What I learned when I was corrections chair and I went to 38 prisons, when you go to places like Dannemora and Attica, they look like something out of the 1940s prison movie.
Rikers is not in prison.
I understand that. I'm making an analogy, sir. When they were built in the 1920s and 30s, what we understood about how to provide safe environments is different. And so the more recently built maxes, like Shawagunk, they have designs to make them safer based on the way they limit inmate interaction, the way they limit where they move. There are places in Shawagunk that have entire units of people who are there for sexual predator things that in general population would create problems. The corrections world has advanced since Rikers was built. I think we could do a better job. Congestion pricing. In order to fix first of all, the public advocate can't fix the MTA. A. B. Melissa Margarito was Speaker of the City Council for 4 years and did nothing about it, and now she's running on the Fix the MTA thing. That's kind of ridiculous. What you need to do is you need to have dedicated funding sources in order to go directly to the MTA so the governor can't steal them. So I have a bill that would create a millionaire's tax in the city of New York that would bring in $3 billion. That is not enough money. Congestion pricing is an option that I've always been weary of, and I don't like it because I think it falls hardest on lower income people and hardest on people who live places where they don't have as much transportation options. I live in the transportation mecca, and other people live in transportation deserts. And so the reality is we can't make the rules for one without acknowledging the other.
Okay, one more question for the assembly, then we gotta get this thing moving. Yes, sir.
American Board Association board member. My question to you, since you are talking about transportation, is LaGuardia Airport, JFK, can we have a hub or a transportation system, like a train system like they have in Chicago, that would go from the city to LaGuardia Airport, just like how we have it at Kennedy Airport? And can we get a link from Kennedy to LaGuardia? Okay? A lot of people on the van would get stuck. Okay? We need a system that can go from the airport to the center of the city. Now that you talk about transportation.
As an assembly member, we met with the MTA, and one of the things I raised with them is don't think you have to reinvent the wheel. You need to look to other places who have had these problems. So the answer to your question is absolutely. We cannot be a first world city and have a third world transportation system. And as the chair currently of the Arts and Tourism Committee, which brings in billions and billions of dollars every year, if we fail to do what you're saying, people will stop coming. I know that when Donald Trump became president, many people stopped coming to America because they were afraid they wouldn't be let out or they wouldn't be let in because he created hostility and fear. That's what he did. So in the end, yes, we should do that. It's long overdue, and I fully would support it. And finding funding sources that can't be stolen by the state government is the way to be done. Okay? Thank you very much. I'm Danny O'Donnell.
Okay, moving this right along, I would like to call upon Ms. Dawn Smalls, Public Advocate.
Thank you. Thank you guys for having me. So I'm Dawn Smalls, and I am one of the non-elected officials that are running in this race. I am a mom, I am an attorney, and I am a first-time candidate. I am running because I believe that New Yorkers deserve a government that works and a government that works for you. I have a track record of working in the bureaucracy and breaking through the bureaucracy to get results. I am coming to this race with over 2 decades of experience in law, government, politics, and philanthropy. My first job out of college was the assistant to White House Chief of Staff, John Podesta. In the Obama administration, I was the executive secretary at HHS, which was the chief regulatory officer for the agency, which is the 3rd largest bureaucracy in the federal government. And I was part of the leadership team that was responsible for the initial implementation of the Affordable Care Act, which of course has given health care to millions of Americans. I am an attorney and I am a litigator at one of the top litigation shops in the city and frankly the country. In my role as an attorney, I have represented immigrant workers in actions for fair pay. Just last week, we settled the largest class action on behalf of minimum wage workers ever for $65.5 million, representing au pairs, suing the au pair industry for wage fixing and fair pay. Danny mentioned a couple of things that I think are important, and first and foremost, I think, is independence. So the public advocate is, by charter, supposed to be the officer that is supposed to keep the mayor be a check on the mayor and the city council and city government in how well they provide services to New Yorkers. That is what the public advocate does. So you need somebody in that role that can actually act independently of the mayor, city government, and the city council. The benefit of somebody like me is that I am deeply immersed in experience in democratic politics, but I am not deeply immersed or entrenched in the local machine. I'm happy to work with the mayor when I think that he's doing something right. I'm happy to work with the governor when he's doing something right, but I have absolutely no problem calling them out and really taking them to task when they're not. The other thing that I think is important is that right now, the city leadership, now that Tish has ascended to being the next Attorney General, is that the city's leadership is all men, and specifically all white men. So you have de Blasio, you have Scott Stringer, and then you have Corey Johnson. And this is in the city that is supposed to be a national leader in progressive politics in the year that we have come out of the blue wave that was largely driven by women and women of color. There are 23 candidates on the ballot. Now, I believe that I am the most qualified, but there is no reason that you cannot elect a woman to this role. None. The public advocate has a limited suite of powers. The biggest one is the bully pulpit. Another is introducing legislation in the city council. But another important role is to litigate. That's something that Tish really tried to dig into in her time as public advocate. She's a graduate of Howard Law School. And I think that, and Danny mentioned this as well, that being an attorney for this particular role is another important qualification. And not only am I an attorney, I am a litigator and am really excited and focused on how to use that aspect of this job to focus on the mandate of this office. So what do I want to do? I have 4 focus areas. First and foremost is the subway. I don't think you can have an office whose mandate is focused on services that New Yorkers experience on a daily basis and not discuss the subway. Now, I am, just like you are, I know that the subway is not primarily or solely within city control, but the public advocate is an office that is elected by all 5 boroughs the same way the mayor is. And my position is, if the mayor can go to Paris, the public advocate can go to Albany. You cannot solve problems without talking to all of the stakeholders necessary, all of the people that impact the services that you see on a daily basis. you're just talking past each other unless you can really engage and talk to everyone that can actually solve that problem. My next issue is affordable housing. I would organize my office around all of these issues, but specifically having a team of people that focus on affordable housing all day, every day. Why does that matter? We talked about Amazon a bit. There are a lot of issues with that deal, but one of the things that's gotten lost in the discussion is that there were 1,500 affordable housing units slotted for that site. And I haven't heard any alternative plan now that Amazon is going to take that over. Where are those, do we have a contingency plan? Do we have an alternative plan? Where are those 1,500 affordable housing units going to be built? We are in a crisis, and we can't just say, oops, we're back, we're now 1,500 affordable housing units in the hole. My next issue is homelessness. I really want to change the frame around homelessness to really focus on the fact that there are more children that are 6 and under that are homeless in this city than there are single men. That's not how we think about this issue. And really focus on how we can get these young women and young families into stable housing. My last issue is voting reforms. I'm very, very excited to see that the New York legislature has passed these long, long overdue reforms, but it doesn't mean anything if they're not properly implemented. And I think the public advocate can play a critical role to make sure that despite the headlines, you actually see the difference the next time you head to the polls.
Where do you live in the city?
I live in Flatiron.
Do you have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Flatiron, Manhattan, sorry.
Yes,
Yes. It may not seem like a big deal, but the cell phone towers, because I live in Fresh Meadows, I'm noticing a lot of them are going up, and those EMFs are supposedly cause infertility, cancer, all kinds of serious stuff. Maybe people aren't serious about that, but I happen to be chemically sensitive to these kind of things, and I'm noticing they're all over the place. And who is in charge? Like, who has control of this? I mean, they're not telling the community they're doing it. Would you know anything about that?
I don't, but I'm happy to look into it.
Okay, we have another question? Yes, sir. No, you already have it. Yeah, forget it. Robert, go ahead. That's okay. Okay.
Hi, ma'am.
Yes.
Good evening.
Good evening.
First of all, a couple quick points.
Yes.
Just ask the question.
NYCHA's a mess,
Yes.
okay? I'd like to know, as a public advocate, what would you do to help people with disabilities? Okay? We're literally getting crapped on, okay? And it's about time that our rights are respected.
Absolutely. So I just want to make sure I heard the first part of your question. Did you mention NYCHA?
Yes.
Okay. So you want me to respond? I'm just trying to make sure I get the full
It's a
scope of
mess.
your question.
It's a mess. I mean, these people are
No, we gotta let her answer the
they're
question.
living like dogs.
Let her answer the question.
Okay.
He's asking about NYCHA, he's also asking about people with disabilities.
Okay. So I think the public advocate is a role that is uniquely situated to help people with disabilities because it's specifically focused on service delivery and how well city government provides services to New Yorkers, including those with disabilities. So I have met with the Club 504. I have committed to them that as public advocate, I would have not only a staff member with disabilities, but somebody that could really keep an eye on all of the services that the city is providing, just because I think that's such a core part of what the office does and what the office should do. With respect to NYCHA, what I would say is there's a lot of things, I mean, we've found out some things about that's going on in NYCHA from the Inspector General's report about lead and everything else, but there's a real information gap about how NYCHA is being managed, how the repairs are being done, why they take so long. And again, that's something that the public advocate can squarely do, which is really demand that information so that we are better equipped to hold NYCHA accountable and make sure that we get real results for people now.
We're gonna do one more question from Ms. Smalls.
Did you
One
do
more
that?
question from Ms. Smalls? Okay,
do that?
Yes.
we have the young lady in the back.
Thank you, thank you. There's a wave of construction going through Queens and the rest of the city. And there's a lack of planning and information that's given to individual residents and homeowners and small businesses in order to protect them when things happen with regard to that type of construction. In my own home, my home was recently damaged by National Grid, and I'm in the process of fighting off 2 utility companies and the city. So my question is, what can the public advocate do to further and better inform and protect the public? People, developers may have a right to develop, but they don't have a right to harm us.
100%. So I think a core function of the Public Advocate's Office is information and making sure that information about construction that's happening in the community, that you know about that ahead of time, and that developers that may be operating near and around your home are taking the proper safety precautions that they need to beforehand. The other thing I would say is that the public advocate does not, I have focused on the big ticket items that the systemic issues that the public advocate can help with. But the public advocate is also an office where to handle and respond to individual issues. So to the extent that you are somebody individually that was harmed or having a problem with a construction site or a developer that had not taken appropriate safety precautions, that's something that the public advocate and my office would help and do individual follow-up on.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Moving right along, before we bring up Councilmember Espinal, I would like to acknowledge 2 people who were such a great help tonight that if it wasn't for them, this magnificent turnout and this wonderful evening would not have happened. I want to especially Rihanna Young, who's on the Soil Weapon Democratic Club Executive Board. I believe she's the Vice President of the Young Dems, right? Vice President of the Young Dems, and a proud staff member of Councilman Redemption. I would also like to acknowledge Megan Molina from the Eli Rozek staff, who really did a great job tonight. And really, we could not have done this without them. So thank you very, very much. At this time, I'd like to call up Councilman Rafael Espinal.
Thank you so much. Happy New Year, everyone. It's great to be here. I think I was here right before the New Year for your holiday party. We had pizza and all that good stuff, which I really enjoyed. So thank you for having me back then. But it's great to be here today. I'm a city council member. I represent Cypress Hills in East New York, Brooklyn. I serve with all of the greats of Queens, like Karen Koslowitz. I serve with David Weber in the State Assembly. But I'm now running to become a public advocate. If you would have asked me last year, this is what I'll be doing with my life right now, I would have told you no. But I'm running because I'm concerned about the direction our city is headed. I am running on the Livable City party line. So when you go to the ballot, you'll see Livable City, and it'll say my name. And the reason I'm running on the Livable City party line is because when I took office for the first time, I ran on all of the same issues we hear a lot of elected officials talking about. It's how do we improve our neighborhoods? How do we improve the quality of our living? You know, my parents are homeowners. I grew up in a very rough neighborhood, and all I wished was for the city to invest in my neighborhood and stop ignoring the issues that matter to us most. What I'm seeing now is that the New York City is becoming a lot less livable. It's becoming very unaffordable for those who rent. It's becoming very unaffordable for those who own homes. Our property taxes go up, our rent goes up, and no one's talking about how we're going to fix those issues. When we talk about transportation, the MTA is falling apart. No one really made the right investments in the past and in the current and during the current administration. That's why it's falling apart. When we talk about congestion, mass transit, there's still a lot of transit deserts. Why are we not increasing bus services, especially express bus services in neighborhoods that need the most, like the one we're here tonight? When we talk about greening our communities, you know, we're seeing a lot of construction on our green spaces, in our parks, in our community gardens, and there's no real conversation about the importance of those spaces as well. And I think our city needs someone who understands the importance of all these issues, someone who wants to be able to finally address all these issues, because I'm confused, like a lot of New Yorkers are. you know, people run for mayor and say, I'm going to fix this, I'm going to fix that, I promise you this, I promise you that, but it never really happens. And I feel like what happens is that our concerns are often ignored, and we feel like we're not being heard. So I want to be a voice as public advocate to make New York City a more livable city for all of us. I, as city council member, have a long record of working on all of the issues that affect all of us. Whether you're a small business owner, there was a recent bill I passed last week to help business owners who were being fined for their awnings and their signs. People were calling 311, they were getting fined $10,000 to $20,000. We passed a bill that refunded all that money to them so they can just keep their doors open and be able to continue paying their employees. As a homeowner in East New York, as a son of homeowners, in East New York, I created the city's first ever a homeowners help desk. A help desk that's based in East New York, where all the homeowners can go to and figure out what are the programs that are there to help and support them. You know, why are we not looking at programs that are going to help the everyday New Yorker continue to stay needing to live here? Why are they being squeezed out of here because we can't afford to live here? Or many of us are deciding to pack up and move out because the city is becoming a lot harder to live in. So as public advocate, I will not only pass legislation that will deal with those issues, I will also hold the mayor accountable. You know, he spends money on initiatives that somehow is going to improve New Yorkers' lives. What we see is there's no follow-through, poor management. A lot of our money gets wasted, and a lot of these initiatives end up falling through, and no one really gets the benefit of what was benefited to us. Look at the Fair Fares program, something the city council fought really hard for. And we were promised that January 1st, every New Yorker who needs a half-fare Metro card will get one. It took us to stand up on the City Hall with the speaker and say, Mr. Mayor, why have you not instituted this program, which you said will happen within 6 months? And that's why we need someone who's going to work with the council, understand these intricacies of these issues, and do the work necessary to make New York a better place. I know there's a lot of talk about Amazon. I didn't sign the letter to Amazon because I knew that probably down the line it's going to create issues here in our community, especially in Queens. It's going to make cities more expensive, continue to drive out small businesses. And what happens is that we have people running in this race who signed that letter, and now we're turning around and saying, oh wait, I didn't mean to sign that letter, because now they're seeing that a lot of people in Queens are upset about the outcome of the decision. So we need someone who's going to think ahead and say, this decision is going to snowball into a problem, and that not only until we have someone who can think like that, then we'll start being able to create a better city for all New Yorkers. I'm also responsible for creating, and to show how inclusive I am in the work I do, I'm also responsible for creating a program called the Holocaust Survivors Initiative. As a Dominican, someone who's in East New York, I have 0 Holocaust survivors and 0 Jewish population in my neighborhood. But I knew it was the right thing to do to help Holocaust survivors who were living in poverty. We were able to get over $4 million to help Holocaust survivors get a warm meal, get access to health care, get social services. And people would ask me, you're Dominican, why do you care about this? You're from East New York. I'm like, it's not about where I'm from, it's about us helping each other as New Yorkers. No voice should be left behind. We should be representing every single voice. You know, I'm not a business owner. We should help the business owners. I'm not Jewish, but we should help the Jewish population. I also created, working with Chaim Deutsch, the speaker, the first ever pilot program to make halal and kosher food. I'm not Muslim, but there's Muslim children who are hungry because they're not eating in school. And that's the way we should be thinking about addressing the city's problems. As public advocate, I'll be your advocate across the board. I would love to have your support February 26th. Oh yeah, I'm Dominican. And I learned through the process that the Dominican Republic was the only country in the Western Hemisphere to accept Holocaust survivors.
Yeah, explain to me nobody ever explained this, the jurisdictional power that the public has versus New York City and the mayor. What is your real jurisdictional power?
Yeah.
Because I know Tish had put in some stuff,
yeah,
and it was turned down in court, but they said she didn't have, jurisdictional power to do that.
Yeah, so, a lot of the candidates who are going to come up here are going to tell you that they're going to hold the mayor accountable, they're going to sue the city, they're going to do all these things. No one talks about the power to introduce and pass legislation like a city councilman can do. As a public advocate, you can do that. Tish James actually is the public advocate that passed the most legislation than any other public advocate in the history of the city. So that shows that you do have the power to pass laws and regulations that are going to change the direction of our city.
According to the city charter, what is the jurisdictional power that you have?
You can pass legislation. You can create lawsuits, right? So you have subpoena power. You sit on certain boards, like the pension board, and you do have say and oversight over the conversations there. And your job is to hold the mayor accountable as a whole, and speak for the public. And that's the job. There's a lot of conversation about what else goes beyond that, but I think it's very important to have someone who has the flexibility to create the agenda for the people of New York, and with the power of the voters, because you can't do it alone, right? With the power of the voters, you can push the mayor to make certain decisions because you're carrying that influence from people like you who get involved in the process.
I just want to say, as a public advocate, if elected, I would want to talk to New Yorkers to ensure that they get the services they deserve, how would you do that? And to piggyback off the gentleman, how would you help individuals with mental illness, disabilities, and the elderly? Because without family members around or friends around to help these people, they don't get the services that they need. And I know it's hard dealing with people with mental illness because they don't always comply, and a lot of bureaucracy involved. But without people around, such as myself, that I helped my brother for years to finally get, because I had to reach out to Mr. Gillibrand, he wouldn't be here today, and I shouldn't be the only one doing this.
Yeah, it's a very important question, and it's around mental health and what can we do as a city and public advocate to ensure that everyone's getting the services they need and deserve. Number one thing, I think we should advocate for everyone to have health care. Because of the fact that there are families without health care, they're not eligible for some of the programs for assistance that they need in their home to work with the family. Right, so we also have to, this is a big state issue, right? It has come to the state. They're the ones that really regulate the funding that comes to helping provide services for those mental health disabilities and health assistance and home care assistance. So as public advocate, I will go to Albany. I was a state assembly member. I did serve with David for 2 years. I'm very familiar with how how the sausage is made up there. I will be going up there, going to the hearings, advocating, and making sure that these issues that are important to us are being addressed. And I'm going to be honest. As a councilor, I never have all the answers. I don't. All of the good ideas I've had was listening to people like you. So I promise you as public advocate, when I hear these issues that are not being addressed, it will always be my mission to make sure that I find a way to address those problems.
This young lady over here has that question.
So first of all, I wanted to say as a Dominican giving to New York, yay, because I'm a New Yorker that goes to DR and does work down there.
Nice.
I'm opening a school down in Playa Caleta, and I just came back in October from digging the foundation and doing all that good stuff. So
Awesome.
I know that there's a real problem with poverty in our city, and I feel that poverty may be coming down to people of my generation and my age.
Yep.
I am your typical broke millennial. I have $50,000 college debt. I cannot move away from my mother. Not that, I love her, but, I need to have my own place. I'm 31. So what do you say to your voters age 18 to 32? We need to hear someone speak to us.
I'm 34, so hopefully I'm not too old. I'm a millennial too. Hopefully I fall into that category as well. But just so you understand how much I understand what you're going through, my 29, 30-year-old brother still lives with me. And he pays no rent because he can't afford to live anywhere else, and I take care of him, and he's 30 years old. So it's a huge problem. And I think what we should be advocating for is for those who have student debt to be able to cancel their debt. We give a lot of corporate tax loopholes.
My question is mostly active, getting us active, because my
in
priority
politics.
is young people.
Yeah, I mean that's one way that we'll start shifting the conversations when young people start voting.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for is engagement.
Yeah, when I ran for office, I was 27 years old. My number one priority was getting people from our generation involved in the conversation, because I know the only way that's going to shift is if we get involved. But the only way we're going to vote is if elected officials start talking about the issues that matter to us the most. And that's what I'm running on as well, making sure that our issues are being heard across the board.
One more question for these councilmen.
How you doing, Raphael? I'm Gideon Dunkley, New American Voters Association board member. My question to you is, how would you improve the service on the number 7 train?
Goes back down to making the right investments and fixing the signals. We've learned through these studies that the right investments weren't being put in by the past leadership and current leadership. There are people running in this race who had the opportunity to directly manage the budget and influence the budget, and they didn't think to consider about what the deterioration of our MTA system. We need to have someone who's going to think ahead about these problems before they become a problem. We need to make sure that the budget, here on out, prioritizes funding to the MTA. We have to stop fighting with the state about who's responsible for what. We have to split the costs right in half. We have to find ways to increase revenue. But I think at the end of the day, the city and the state has to prioritize funding for the MTA and also NYCHA, which I heard NYCHA was a pretty issue as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Queens. Appreciate it.
Okay. Our next candidate is Assemblywoman Letitia Walker from Brooklyn.
Good evening, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here, and I want to also give honor to all of my colleagues in government who are here this evening. So I've told most people that to know me is to know my story. And I've heard a question about NYCHA. Well, I was born and raised in NYCHA. And the same experiences that are taking place today, no heat, no hot water, leaky roofs, windows that will fall on our fingers and sometimes break little fingers, they existed when I was a kid as well. And my parents came to New York City from South Carolina. And they knew that they were leaving a lot of deprivation and poverty in their little small town. But if they came to this great city, they could offer their family a future that they could not envision for themselves, just like so many of you for your children or your parents for you. Well, my mom, and when we lived in that NYCHA development, NYCHA came to us and said, we have this program, it's called Hope 6. We're gonna knock your development down and we're gonna build it back again and everybody will have a chance to move back in. That never happened. And my mom had to sign a document this big, a legal document, on her 8th grade education. And she didn't know what she was signing, but she was signing away her home. She was signing away the security of her family. And she made me vow to her at that moment that I will go on to law school, become an attorney, so that I can make sure that the injustices that we experience would never be experienced by another person ever again in any other community. Yeah. And that's what I did. I utilized my law degree in the service of others. I prevent evictions. I stop foreclosures. I help people who come through the criminal justice system. But I wasn't content with everything that I was doing, so I went on and became counsel to a member of Congress. After that, when my seat became open, I knew that I needed to give back in government to a community that had given me so much. And I became a member of the Assembly. I am chair of the subcommittee on renewable energy, where we have a program that's $250 million where we put solar panels on 225 homes in our neighborhood. People who have zero energy costs because of this investment. We were also able to get $1.5 million from the government in order to build new hospitals, build new urgent care facilities, and create more jobs within our communities. And I'm a single mom. And I know how important it is to fight on behalf of a strong, basic, and sound education. I thought I was doing something when I was fighting for education for our children before I became a parent. But once I became a parent, the level of understanding it was that I had really just got taken to a new height. And it is that same level of fight that I want to fight on your behalf. I know I heard a question about the powers and the jurisdiction of this office. Well, guess what? People are trying to get rid of the office because they said that the office has no power. But we know that we're going to go in as a city council charter revision that's happening this year. We're going to go and get the subpoena power that the office does not have. We're going to go and get the investigatory power that the office does not have. And you know what else? The office, you're right, does not have the power to sue. So we're going to go in and we're going to make sure that it has standing, because our present public advocate brought a lawsuit on behalf of so many children in our city. And that lawsuit was not allowed to stand. The court said to them that you have to go home because the public advocate does not have this jurisdiction. But we're going to change that. I think that this office has 4 different responsibilities. It's to advocate, it's to agitate, it's to legislate, and it's to litigate. Once the microphones are gone and the cameras are gone, we still need somebody who's going to be able to fight on our behalf, to stand and talk truth to power, to stand in the halls of justice, and to make sure that fairness, justice, and equity is served. I'm also the sponsor of the bail reform bill that recognizes that so many people are sitting in Rikers Island right now who have not been convicted of any crime, but yet they sit there and they languish, and to allow all of that criminal mindedness to just fester. And I made sure that we were able to create the level of coalitions that we need across our state in order to make it happen. And I look forward to its passage also in the New York State Senate and to be signed into law by our governor. In addition to that, I've also introduced a number of bills: early voting, same-day voter registration, automatic voting, because we believe that voting should be easy, and that's our level of democracy. So I am Assemblywoman Latrice Walker, and I am here humbly standing in need of your support, your encouragement, and your endorsement in this race for New York City Public Advocate. I was brought up by my own grit. I came out of a lot of different situations, but I was able to stand. I tell people all the time that they thought that they could bury us, but they didn't know I was a seed. And the only woman who I've ever seen who was an attorney were two women, a woman named Deborah and Letitia James. And I've watched them both and how they administer justice on behalf of all of the people, and that's basically what I love to embody. I like to take what she did with the office, but make it bigger, better, bolder, and stronger for all of the people of the city of New York. Yes. Thank you.
Handicap accessibility center with elevators being fixed and computerized on our buses. You can see that's being done. I know I told David Ruffin stuff about that stuff. Maybe public advocate all good.
Okay, so where? Elevators or NYCHA?
Elevators.
Where?
On the trains and buses.
On the trains and buses, absolutely. So a lot of people are talking a lot about congestion pricing, right? As if congestion pricing is the only answer to our crisis in the MTA, which we know we may not be able to get all of that there is necessary to fix the MTA through that system. But one of the things that I've been pushing is the fact that in my community, there is no elevator subway system. So I have a north, the naturally occurring retirement community. So there's so many people who are just cut out from actually using an MTA, which we expect to be reliable, affordable, and accessible. But it's not happening. And we know that this year is a time for the 2019 capital budget for the MTA. And we will make sure that we go in and say that congestion pricing is not the only answer. There's one thing that I know, they were talking a lot about with NYCHA, that they're about to go into this receivership. My mom always told me that it's always better to give than to receive. And so the same level of support that I think that NYCHA needs for its infrastructure changes is the same level of support that the MTA needs and it depends on. In fact, there is a freight rail train system that comes right through my community. And it's a great possibility that this rail system can connect Staten Island all the way up through the Bronx and coming through Queens. But we don't have those level of conversations, but yet and still the support for us to build brand new subways. And people always say, well, the MTA is broke. Well, if you consider being, $52 billion broke, I'd like to be that kind of broke, right? But I think it's important for us to make sure that we have accessible subway systems, and that we also have accessorized and a bus that's reliable too. Because in so many communities across our city, the bus is shut off at 6 or 8 o'clock p.m. or they just don't go there. After having an opportunity to go across the city, when you're up in Co-op City, and when you're out in Far Rockaway, or when you're out in Staten Island, we think we have MTA issues. But when you recognize some of the problems that they're experiencing, I think we take even the little crumbs that we have for granted. So I am committed to making sure that we're fighting on behalf of all of our communities across New York City in order to get what we need this year out of the 2019 MTA capital budget plan.
Warren Schreiber, President of the FBI Democratic Club. So first, I just want to say really quickly, I also grew up in NYCHA. I grew up at a time when it was a wonderful place, so the city can do better. It can absolutely do better. But my question has to do with transportation.
we live in a transportation desert. Where I live, you could stand outside all day long waiting for a yellow taxi or a borough taxi. Never ever going to happen. You have a better chance of seeing a dodo bird. Never going to happen. The city, when they put the cap on the rideshare, I think they made a terrible mistake. But my question is, when it comes to the medallion taxes, and I feel for the drivers, they're having a terrible, terrible time. But this is nothing but discrimination. It's been going on that I know of at least 60 years and probably more. There are communities they will not serve, communities of color that they will not serve, and that's why you don't see yellow taxis in other places. What would you suggest can be done to make that situation better in the transit districts? And also, do you think that possibly it's time for somebody like a public advocate to call for an investigation of the Taxi and Limousine Commission?
I absolutely think that that's necessary. Now mind you, it's a travesty where racial and geographic discrimination exists. And wherever discrimination exists, I think it's important for us to go in and investigate and find that information out. But just like where discrimination existed anywhere else, if people don't listen to our cries, if people don't want to sit down and have a conversation with us as to how to address it and fix it, we will have a public advocate that can sue. Which is why I think it's important for us to make this next person in this office an attorney. Because again, whenever people aren't listening to us, we always have the power of the law on our side to be able to go in. And that's how we've been able to address discrimination all across our country. And I still believe in that. Now, mind you, a taxi may not come out to your community. It certainly isn't coming to my community in Brownsville. And in fact, there are even situations where I've stood outside and tried to hail a taxi cab and to just watch them whisk by without ever having an opportunity to figure out how I'm going to get home. This has happened to me. This has happened to so many New Yorkers across our city. I think it's unfair. I think it's unjust. I think it's inequitable. I think it's illegal. And I'd love to have the opportunity to go after them on each and every one of our behalves.
Okay. One more question for the Assemblywoman. Kevin? This is a question I'm going to ask you, but it's one I would like to have everybody answer. But to a very large extent, you've made this very strong case of you want the public advocate to be very aggressive in advocacy, which is good, against the city council and the mayor to a large extent. If you're successful, presently those two groups can destroy your budget. Why have you not asked for independent budgeting so that you can do your job independently? And everybody else.
That's a very good question. In fact, every city council member has always had to go into the city council as well as to the mayor in order to request, resources for their budget. Again, I think it's important while we have this opportunity for a city charter to be able to go in and strengthen the office, and I think getting a mandated budget is one of those things that can definitely be one of the requests that we make. It's always bewildering to me how they make this office, which is supposed to be the people's office and the voice of the voiceless and the face for the faceless. However, it's incumbent upon politics and having to work through that system. I think but again, once we have our charter change, I think it's important for us to go in and rectify a number of the opportunities that were missed during the first time. Of course, there's always an opportunity to make things bigger and better and stronger, and I really think that that's a great one, and that's a great suggestion, and I will definitely take a look at having that conversation.
Here's the follow-up. Have you requested that during the budget periods for the City Council Charter Commission?
Well, it was definitely on the conversation with respect, as I was watching the Mayor's Charter Commission take place. I am awaiting for them to let us know and give us notice on when the hearings will take place across the city under the City Council opportunity. They have started to come to different communities and community boards. It was something that I've raised in that particular medium, but once they get the schedule up and running with respect to this seriously looking at this opportunity, I will definitely be there with my white paper in hand to say that these are the recommendations that I see that this office needs in order to move forward. So I look forward to the opportunity to work on that and other issues on your behalf. And I know some of the other things that we've talked about in our community is about this placement of homeless shelters within our neighborhoods without having any real conversation with us about that. We know one of the things that I always say is that the saturation of homeless shelters and these types of transitional housing, it's always a dumping ground in certain communities, and definitely in the community that I was born and raised in. And I think that the resources that we use to build these facilities need to be utilized for more real, permanent, affordable housing that's really affordable. Because this stuff that we've been seeing just is the number one question people ask. Is affordable to whom? And what it's been doing is dumping so many young people and kids who are in transitional housing into our school system, and so that they're not getting the level of education that is right for them to be supportive, because they have to make their way from whatever their housing is back to the Bronx or back to this place. And so many kids, as we heard Councilmember Espinal say, are going to school hungry, and we have to put food pantries in our school, are going to school without clean clothes, and we've had to put washing machines and dryers in our schools. So people don't recognize, and this administration doesn't recognize, all of the counterintuitive opportunities that when they decide to put in a homeless shelter in our neighborhood, what does this effect have on so many other particulars that a community has to go through, and how we need to ramp up into full gear to make sure that these communities are supported and these individuals are supported as well. The young lady who was in HRA who lost her voucher for her kid to go to daycare, she's from my neighborhood. And you know, when we had to go through that travesty, it was a disgusting display of the administration of justice and government services within our community, and we definitely need a fighter on our behalf. She needed one, she had one. So do so many other people in the city of New York. And I am Assemblywoman Latrice Walker, and I'd love to be that fighter on your behalf. God bless you.
I would just like to acknowledge we've been joined by former Councilwoman Elizabeth Crowley. At this time, I'd like to call David Eisenbach.
Hey, how are you? Good to see you again. My name is Dr. David Eisenbach. I teach history at Columbia. And I know many of you from my last run, which was in 2017 when I ran in the Democratic primary as an anti-de Blasio Democrat. Now I did that before it became popular suddenly for all my Democratic colleagues to now criticize the mayor for not doing this, for not doing that, for giving away this neighborhood to big real estate, for not saving small business there. Well, I did it when it wasn't safe and it wasn't popular in many parts of this city. Now the fact of the matter is that under Bill de Blasio, we have record homelessness. We have record displacement from a man who promised to fix the tale of two cities. The middle class is disappearing. And all you have to do is look around and you see empty storefronts after empty storefronts when allegedly we're in an economic boom. Well, I promised you when I ran the last time that if I was elected public advocate, I was going to pass the Small Business Job Survival Act. This act's been around since Ruth Messenger introduced it 32 years ago. Well, I didn't win. I got 92,000 votes with no money and no name recognition, but I didn't win. But I decided to pass the bill as a private citizen. And I made sure we got a city council speaker who was willing to give it a public hearing. We got our public hearing in the fall, and we are going to pass that bill that's going to give small business owners rights in the lease renegotiation process for the first time in over 3 decades. Now, if I can do that as a private citizen, imagine what I can do as your public advocate. I'm going to take on the mayor. When he says the solution to fixing educational disparity in our city is to mess with the testing and the entrance standards for the specialized high schools, I'll say absolutely not. When he says that the solution to the affordable housing crisis is to build luxury towers with just a tiny percentage of affordable, I'll say absolutely not. And when he keeps on engaging in pay-to-play corruption and there is silence from the city council, I will be the one who will stand up and say, enough's enough, Mr. Mayor. So if you want an independent voice, an independent Democrat for public advocate, please vote for me, David Eisenbach, on February 26th. Thank you very much.
Anybody have any questions?
What do you teach?
What do I teach? I teach U.S. presidential history.
Oh,
Yeah, U.S. president. So if you have any questions about U.S. presidents, I can answer those too.
Is it gonna be over?
Oh my goodness! Like every day, there's something new to talk about. So it's been a blast. And by the way, my enrollment is skyrocketed too, so that's a good thing. People learning more history. That's great.
Do we have any other questions? There's a question back there. Okay.
Since you're a history teacher at Columbia,
Yes.
I want to know what are your thoughts regarding the present federal government shutdown?
Right. Well, usually federal government shutdowns are just political theater. But this one is extended and this one is getting serious, and there doesn't seem to be an end in sight. It is ridiculous that in a $3 to $4 trillion budget, we are debating $5 billion. And this is just for both sides, right? Something to please their base. At the end of the day, however, we have federal employees who aren't getting paychecks. We have real services that need to be delivered. And so we have to, at the end of the day, cut out all of the baloney and get back to work. We gotta reopen up the government. That's my attitude. That's my answer.
Anybody else?
No other questions?
I think, all the young staff over here, do you think that I should go to his class sometime? What do you think, huh? And you know what I would tell him? I would tell him what I tell all the young staff and all the interns that walk into David Wemperin's office. What do I tell them? Everything you learned in college, it's all blank. It's useless. Watch what I do. That's political science. Thank you, thank you, Tony. And anybody have any other questions? Because I want to move this right along. Yes, dear. The last question.
I have the same question that I gave to someone earlier.
The same question?
Same question.
Come on, you can think of something else. No, I can't do that. No, I can't do that. Thank you. Okay, you get it. You simply been saying yes.
Thank you, thank you. There's a wave of construction going through this city, through Queens, and there are very little, if any, protections in place for homeowners, residents, and small business people to protect them.
Right.
Properties are being damaged in some cases, and what would you do as public advocate to protect the public and inform the public?
That's right, that's right. And the reason why that's happening is the reason why we're rezoning affordable neighborhoods and we're building luxury towers. And that is because the real estate industry in New York City, REBNY, the Real Estate Board of New York, has corrupted our politicians. So they don't stand up for communities. They bow down to big real estate. And I want to be the public advocate that stands up to REBNY. In fact, we each, now that it's a special election, get to name our own parties. The name of my party is Stop REBNY. You want to get to the heart of the matter, you want to get to the heart of Bill de Blasio's corruption and the pay-to-play corruption of the city council and the damage to property owners and communities that you're talking about and the small business crisis, why it's taken so long to pass this bill, you will find it in big real estate, and I will be the one that will stand up to that. Okay, great.
I don't want to ask a question. I want to make a statement.
Okay.
I am a city council member, and I resent what you said.
What's not true?
Not true. What you said. People corruption.
I said pay-to-play corruption. When you have a mayor who had 6 different investigations by the Manhattan DA and the U.S. Attorney, and they issue reports in which they say that it's not that he's innocent, it's that pay-to-pay corruption, thanks to a Supreme Court decision, is now legal. Anybody can write checks to super PACs. Big real estate has basically funded Bill de Blasio's campaigns, and the city every city council takes big real estate money for the most part. Well, I understand. That's why I'm running, because I'm sick of the pay-to-play corruption. That's why they don't stand up to big real estate. That's why they haven't been able to pass the Small Business Job Survival Act, because you have city council speakers who refuse to even allow it at a committee, even though it's got enough votes to pass. And this has been the case for decades. And so, if you keep on electing the same old politicians, if they just use the next office to get to the next office, it's never going to change.
Be like Trump.
And so, well, you don't have to be like Trump, that's for sure.
If you turn around, you don't want to have politicians, that's what you get. You get Trump. I mean, really, if you go to a doctor who's never been a doctor, that's ridiculous. And you're a politician because you're running for office. So don't run down over here because I ain't going to hear it. I'll tell you that right. Okay, next question. Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, Senator Stavisky would like to say.
Yeah. First of all, if there's anything I think all of us resent, it's fake news. And I'd like to inform you that this week in Albany we passed massive voter reform, eliminating candidacy and early voting, no excuse absentee ballots, many of the issues that you've talked about, but that's not my question. As chair of the Higher Education Committee and previously the ranking member, the City University of New York a couple of years ago faced massive proposed cuts from the governor, $535 million. Fortunately, there were some of us who fought to restore those funds. And my part A of the question is, were you involved in that, and what did you do to help the City University of New York? But secondly, you've talked about helping folks. The governor, in his executive budget, cut all of the, what we call the opportunity programs, including ASAP, which works at the community college level, HEOP, SHEOP, Liberty Partnerships, all of the opportunity programs. What have you done to restore some of these cuts to the City University of New York?
What have I done to restore the cuts?
You're running for public advocate. You want to be the advocate for all of the
Yes.
people. What have you done in the past to restore the funding and help the university that employs you?
Well, I know I teach at Columbia, but as far as CUNY is concerned, one of the biggest problems with CUNY is the rate of increases for the bureaucracy of CUNY. The money that gets spent at CUNY does not go into the classroom. It goes into administration.
And faculty.
No, it doesn't go to faculty. It doesn't go to faculty salaries. It goes to administration. If you actually look at the financial breakdown of CUNY, you find that the massive expansion of their budget has been in administration. We need to bring those costs down and make sure that all the money, or most of the money, that goes to those universities goes into the classroom. That's what I would do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Leave it up.
Okay, I'd like to call upon Ben Yee, our next candidate.
All right. Hey, everybody, I'm Ben Yee. Hey, and I'm running for public advocate. What am I? The questions have started already. No, don't deduct that from my time. I will get to it. I will get to it. I don't come to this race, though, as a career politician or an elected official. I come as a civic technologist and an educator. I've spent my entire professional career working on ways to improve government and how it operates, and how to improve how people interact with their own democracy. And for the last 2 years, in particular, I've been teaching coding and civics to help improve the minds of our young children here in New York. Now, I'm the product of two families that were also looking to improve things. My father's family came here from China and settled in Boston looking for a better life. And my mother's family came here from Poland after World War II. She is an immigrant and was born a refugee. Her parents were Jews who had survived the Holocaust and came here looking for a more tolerant and safer place to raise their family. Now, my parents were provided amazing opportunities in this country. My father became a civil engineer and has been a public servant his entire life. My mother, I say she became a professional, amazing person. She came here when she was 8 and didn't speak a word of English. She taught herself basically by reading the dictionary, and I know because she'll never stop talking about it. The last word she got to was defenestration. True story. Now, she went on to become an incredibly successful lawyer and litigator. She was brought in, ultimately, by Proskauer Rose, one of the biggest law firms in this city, to found their intellectual property division. And when she decided they were sexist because they wouldn't promote women to partner, she left and took their 3 top women attorneys with her to start a new law firm. Edith Clapp. She's amazing. Her story is inspirational. I find my parents' story to be inspirational generally. But it's inspirational another way as well. They got married in 1977. Just 10 years before that, an interracial marriage like theirs would have been illegal in over half of the country. But they did not let where they came from or what other people thought get in their way. They got engaged, they fought for civil rights, they protested wars, and they moved to New York and they thrived. And that's where I was born. I was born right here in New York City, and I was provided amazing opportunities as well. I went to public school. I graduated eventually from Bronx Science. Now, my parents' lives have many lessons for me, but chief among them is everyone is created equal.
Yes.
Everyone deserves an opportunity to live up to their potential, and everyone has a place in our democracy. That is the guiding star which I've followed for the last decade. I got involved in 2008 on the Obama campaign. After that, instead of going to join the administration in Washington, I got involved here in New York, helping hundreds of people run for county committee to build a new voice for a new community. I went to work for the state senate using technology to open government. I joined good government nonprofits, think tanks fighting to reform how our government works and fight corruption. And I joined the Democratic Party and became an elected leader. So I'm currently the Democratic State Committeeman for New York's 66th Assembly District. And I have pushed the party to open to new people and new ideas. Now in the last 2 years, I co-founded an organization, You Matter Nation, to teach civics across this city. I have trained over 4,000 people personally and seen hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them go on to take the next step, to join county committee, to join a community board, to join a community education council, to build a voice for the community where they live. Now I've done this from Parkchester to Staten Island, the East Village to the Rockaways, Southeast Queens, the end of the Bronx, Bayside, College Point, you name it, I've been there and I've taught folks. That's exactly right. So, someone who knows, folks in the audience. Now, this is why I am running for public advocate. And this is why I have concrete proposals that fit within the limited power and budget of the office to improve how our city makes decisions and how it interacts with New Yorkers. Civics for all, power for communities, justice for New Yorkers. These are serious proposals, not platitudes. I don't have the time to go into them. Well, I imagine I don't think anybody's timing me. But I generally don't have time to go into them because they are not simple ideas. They are real programs to be rolled out to improve how communities engage with our government and to give them a real voice in city decision making. So if you'd like to see how they can truly help address the serious challenges facing our city, challenges like affordable housing, like homelessness, like the most segregated education system in this country, like environmental devastation as sea levels rise and New York goes underwater, please check out benjaminye.com/platform. Thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Questions because it's getting late. So who hasn't asked the question yet? Somebody that hasn't asked the question. You go ahead, man.
be the first bill you would like to propose?
Okay, did everybody hear the question? All right, I will repeat it for everybody. The question was, given that the public advocate has the capacity to introduce legislation to the city council, what might my first bill be? Well, that's a great question. The first thing I want to say is, while the public advocate does have the capacity to introduce legislation, it does not have a vote in the council, nor does it have a vote on any committee, which means that it is substantially at a disadvantage when passing legislation. My number one priority as public advocate is to manage and undertake the programs I've spoken about tonight, Civics for All, Power for Communities, and Justice for New Yorkers, because it is something the public advocate can do to improve how our city functions that doesn't require the city council and doesn't rely on the mayor. That said, I have many, many ideas for ways that we can improve the city using legislation. One of them would be to pass a bill to start a pilot program for civics in our public schools. Keep it going. Okay. I will also say there are a few other ideas to improve the way the public advocate's office works, such as giving an independent budget, giving it subpoena power. These are things that obviously a lot of people are talking about, but I want to drive home the idea that the proposals I bring to the table are ones which don't require a change, even though those changes might be nice to have. And also, we obviously have a lot of charter revision opportunities, moving the community, the Civic Engagement Commission into the Public Advocate's office, or the Department of Administration into the Public Advocate's office. I think those are very important ideas as well. And we need to reform the land use process in this city. It's out of control.
So, one more question. Who hasn't asked the question yet? Who hasn't asked the question? Young lady, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for calling me a young lady, I'll take it. What is your position currently on all the solutions on the table to the specialized high school perceived problem? I know there's a lot of initiatives out there, the Discover program, getting rid of the test, replacing the test, multi-tier criteria. What is your position on it and how will you advocate?
Sure, that's a fantastic question. I think the first problem we've encountered with the proposed changes to the specialized high school entrance exam is that there was zero outreach done to communities or to parents to figure out what they would like to see. This is a tremendous issue, and it goes to the core of what's wrong with our government right now. But specifically to the question of how we should do specialized high school admissions, I went to Brock Science and I personally believe that the test is a good model. It is a model which has withstood the test of time, so to speak. It's been around for 84 years, and it is the only educational program run by the city which has produced positive educational outcomes for over half a century. That being said, I think it's completely reasonable to say that we have a diversity issue in these schools. It is also completely reasonable to say that there are other ways to measure achievement than a standardized test. That said, if the mayor wants to experiment with new ways to do admissions to specialized high schools, it can be significantly more easily done by just creating new specialized high schools and testing those ideas. I don't think there's much of an argument to change a very successful program without experimenting and trying to figure out first whether that actually works. Now, I could go on and on about that, but the last thing I would want to say is the program to diversify the specialized high schools, of which there are 5, doesn't actually change outcomes for very many students. We have 1.2 million students in our educational system. You cannot solve educational problems when they get to high school. You have to solve them when they are in K through 12. I thought that pre-K for all was a great idea, and I still do. Why the mayor would start with pre-K for all and then skip to high school doesn't make a lot of sense for me. Especially considering, again, that the number of people who go to the specialized high schools and the number of students that would be impacted is a drop in the bucket compared to the overall number of kids entering high school and in the educational system to begin with. So that is what I feel about the proposed changes, and insofar as what I would do, the Power for Communities program that I proposed is about bringing together stakeholders. I don't have time to go into all the intricacies of it, but basically bringing together stakeholders to do proactive city planning and visioning of ways to improve our city. So bringing together CECs, not just one by one, but as a group, will help us address and identify disparities between school districts and disparities between schools, which will bring communities together to solve these problems as a coalition. That way you don't have a mayor coming in and dividing the city. What we need are holistic solutions that everybody agrees to. And people say, what is the incentive for some school districts to negotiate with others and to solve these problems? Bad policies, like changing the specialized high school entrance exam, are the incentive. All right, I've got to wrap it up. End of the day, if you want a candidate who's going to bring more than words to this fight, who's going to bring ideas and a framework for engaging with communities and the government, I'm your candidate. BenjaminYee.com. I currently reside in the East Village. I've lived between Brooklyn and Manhattan my whole life. But again, 10 years of organizing across all 5 boroughs. That's why folks in this room already know me.
At this time, I'd like to bring up Councilman Ydanis Rodriguez.
How you doing? Nice to see you again. Yeah. So, what do I have? First of all, thank you for being so late, listening to all of us. I think that the fact that we have so many candidates is a testament that, you know, we live in a democratic city where there's opportunity for everyone who believe that they can be the next public advocate to come and present in front of you. What is that I have different from the rest of my colleagues? And on February 26th, something amazing will happen with your support. That for the first time, we will elect someone born and raised in another country as a public advocate that doesn't belong to the United States. But the person that, with your support, will be the next public advocate, not only has been organizing for a few years, but I have been organizing for 40 years without stop. You know, when the Jews came here, and you and those who are here brought all those experience, when the Irish, the Italian, the Afro-American came here, not only to get the job done, but also we came with a lot of organizing skills. I came here to wash dishes at all Henry restaurants, West 4 and 6th Avenue. But working hard, I graduated from City College. I became a teacher for 13 years. I have been a co-founder to schools. So I know about education. And I know that that's a concern. And in my proposal, we will build 4 specialized high schools. And in my proposal, we will get enough funding to learn from the Asian community, to start preparing the kids to take the specialized tests. Excuse me, please. Colleague. Excuse me.
Sorry.
So what I will do is that I will work to be sure that we learn from the Asian community. We will put the funding to start preparing for the specialized tests at the 3rd grade. Not because everyone will choose to go to a specialized school. I believe in progressive education. I believe in portfolio. I believe in the menu of option. And I have practiced those. Being in the classroom for 13 years, none of my colleagues have been having those experiences. None of my colleagues have been a co-founder to a school. One of those, Luperon High School, for new coming students from Latin America, in another school from 6th grade to 12th grade, Washington Heights, Hope Academy. But if you want to have a leader who has expertise on transportation, I'm here in front of you. I chair the Committee of Transportation. I've been putting the MTA on fire when it came to be sure that we fix our transportation system. I've been fighting to be sure that we put enough funding to build more SBS, to be more BRT, so that we, as a resident of Queens, at the same as Staten Island, in any borough that we have transportation districts, have real solution. I do believe that it is unfair that the MTA, that has a value of $1 trillion, is failing to New Yorkers and the 65 million tourists. But in front of you, you're listening to the immigrant with an accent. The immigrant born and raised in the island of the Dominican Republic, the only country that opened first the door to the Jewish community in Puerto Plata. The council member that represents Yeshiva University. So if you want to hear about how friend I've been with the Jewish community, with the Italian community, just check about Washington Heights. And I didn't have to go to Israel with Councilmember Greenfield 3 years ago to learn about the experience that Jews live in the holy city in Tel Aviv. Because I've been working with the Jewish community there. I've been working with the Italian community, with the Irish community that I've been working with Manhattan. So I'm ready. I've been seasoned to be a public advocate because that's what I've been doing for more than 40 years. Since I arrived in this country, I don't know anything more than organizing for social justice. Organizing to be sure that we are built a city where working class live in peace, where we give the respect to the middle class, with a path to take the children of working class to be our middle class. Having a city with 40% of New Yorkers living on poverty is unacceptable. Having a city where we're investing $22 billion for our school system is unacceptable. I had the experience to lead a fight. I had the experience to be an independent voice and to fight the special interests in order to be on behalf of the working class and middle class New Yorkers. Thank you.
Council.
I got one.
Yes, sir.
My name is Joseph DiGirolamo at the Art Club. Since you have experience in education, could you push labor management courses for young students who don't know anything about unions, many of them? Would you push for labor management?
Not only I will push, I'm already working on it.
Good.
So when I did the rezoning of Inwood, a rezoning that I was able to get in a way to be a responsible rezoning, because in Northern Manhattan, those of you that have lived there or have family who live there, you know that for the last 50 years, only 1,000 apartments have been built, and there has not been training on management. There has not been training a good paid job. So what I'm doing is also to be sure that our schools put options on the table. I believe that everyone is in college material, because my two daughters, they will be college material. My daughter Yaris in 6th grade, my daughter Isla in kindergarten. They will have choices. They will choose to go to Ivy League, CUNY, SUNY, or take a year off. But I will be sure that as my daughter is taking algebra in middle school, every single child in New York City should be equipped from your beginning. That's why what I did was bring a rezoning that focus on technology and training. Bring the New York Hospital to be sure that also we work with labor to build good paid job in our city.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Since you're in charge of the Transportation Committee, how much influence do you have on the DOT? Because they seem to be biased against motorists. Every time we turn around, they're raising parking meters, they hide cameras on us, they're building bike lanes so we can't park. What can you do? Will you advocate for the motorists? Because when I spoke with the DOT, they say no one speaks up for the motorists.
One thing that I bring in this conversation that you will take back home and talk among your friends and your family and think about who could be the best candidate is that I am a rational individual. And we know that we have in New York City where we have 1.4 million New Yorkers who own vehicles, who own cars. And that's why I have a bill to create a residential parking bill. That's my bill. I believe that it is Every borough are unique. We cannot expect that a resident of Queens will not rely on their cars. We have to be walking 15 blocks to go and take a train. When you're so close to Long Island, that make it more easy for you to go and go shopping or go and enjoy or take your family there. So I will be there working with the residents of this borough of Queens, and I know that most of you rely on cars, and I'll be doing whatever it takes to be sure that I stand for your interests.
So will you stop the DOT with these crazy bike lanes?
What I would say with this conversation is that I will listen to you. I will find a way of how to get things that make sense, that depend on your interests. It's like bus lane. People will say that bus lane are not important. There's communities that say we don't need more SBS, selective bus services. We don't need more BRT. But I know that this is important also for some residents who live here to be able to go from destination A to B in our city. So again, each borough is different. Each community lives in a different way. And what I can say is again, I will be relying on the interests of the people as I will be making decisions for the whole city of New York.
Recently, someone from Success Academy told me that they're planning to expand to 100,000 students in the next 5 years. And I was wondering what you thought about places like Success Academy expanding at that rate.
Well, Edison Charter School was the first model that the city of New York under Giuliani, they started to build charter school. I was there with the UFT organizing again the Edison Charter School. I believe that we have to work first of all to be sure that if there's any charter school, they should build their own building. We should not be using our school space for charter school. We know that again that as someone that live in a community where historically we don't have a good middle school in Northern Manhattan. Historically, we don't have a high school in Northern Manhattan. And children are failing over and over. I used to chair the Committee of Higher Education. 85% of the students graduating from high school going to community college need remedial courses. And they are not immigrants like me. They are the children of family who were born and raised here. But yet because we don't have a strong pipeline to start in providing the best quality education in underserved community from UPK to 12th grade, our children being failed. So for me again, I'm not a proponent to say, let's just give our public school space to charter school. I believe again that all charter schools should be subject to the same rule and regulation. They should be following the same standard. They should be taking the same kid that they need special need, who are the English language learner. They should have no social workers, no guidance counselor, no psychology to work with everyone. So if anyone come with a good project, if they have an idea and the funding to build their own building, it's a different story than just taking our space from public school to give it to charter school.
My name is Tammy Ashraf, and I'm probably the flip side of you because I don't have a car, and I'm dependent on buses. And, you know, we really actually need the SBS, but I believe that it's being halted right now. And there's only one SBS line in Eastern Queens, to my knowledge, on Main Street. We need more. We need Queens Boulevard even. There are all these express buses that go shooting into the city. There should be a dedicated line for the buses there. I mean, so, like, you're kind of mass moving. You might have a car, and it might be you and maybe a few passengers. But buses are going, well, not that great 24/7, that's for sure not. But, you know, people are dependent, and loads full of people going shooting down all over the place. We need, this is a transportation desert. There is not a bus, a subway in sight of it yet. And we need SBS, we need better bus services, more limited, more creativity on like even putting new lines out. And so I actually,
I used to think that
transportation, and I remember you coming out like a year ago with Barry. He came to the press conference. Yeah, we still don't have that bus, but thank you for coming out and advocating for us, because it was a bus that was gotten rid of like about 10
years ago.
what should do with more SBS? So the answer is, and we have great elected officials. We have elected officials from the whole borough of Queens. We have a great Karen, also, and other great elected officials that we've been working together. Karen can tell you about when we get into the budget season. I've been leading the fight to be sure that we put enough funding to build more SBS and BRT. We are behind Mexico and Colombia when it comes to have the best experience from when someone takes a bus. So what I can tell you is that other colleagues, they will come and say, this is what I would do with transportation. This is what I've been trying to put at the table. What you have is, and my colleague, they can talk about me. I've already been leading the fight. I've already been leading the fight for the last 4 years as a chairman of the Committee of Transportation, and also was part of the same effort when John Liu also was there as a chairman of the Committee of Transportation at the council. I was elected in 2009. I've been at the council for 10 years. I have enough experience and understanding about the need of every single borough, and we know that not only is SBS, we should turn it in the two weapons too. And also we fought not only from transportation, but also we fought for a Small Business Job Survival Act. This is the bill that I'm carrying today that will allow a small business owner to have the opportunity on how to sign and renew a lease, so that community are not changing the landscape, because when the lease expires, the landlord doesn't want to give another lease to that tenant.
All right, one more question.
No.
Yes, no, hold on, one more question. What's this, Jeff Cohn? Jeff Cohn, go ahead.
Yeah, my question is, what are your thoughts on the city reacquiring New York City Transit and buses? It's been under control of the state and the MTA for 40 years, but that's when the city was going broke 40 years ago. What are your thoughts as the chairman and as public advocate candidate for the city taking control over the subway and buses?
I believe that the city, the MTA, is a mess. I believe that the MTA is one of the institutions that is wasting our taxpayer money. The MTA is, again, a $1 trillion corporation. The MTA board must be reorganized. We need to expand the number of residents in New York City, from the public advocate to the controller, to be sitting at the board. We can be open to the conversation, should the city have completely control of the New York City Transit? As we are subcommittee, that they are part of the land use committee, we should also have the New York City Transit under the completely control of our city. We contribute a lot to the MTA. Therefore, we need to increase our role when it comes to management. So I'm open to that conversation, but what I believe is that especially the New York City Transit should be under the control of having most of the members to be the one deciding how we run our New York City Transit related to our trains, our buses, and our ferry. But I also, one thing that I'm going to say in my proposal is also, I will create inside the public office an office only dedicated to transportation. I already said a few days ago, in a forum that I have with the Legal Conservancy, and I see here today, As a student activist, as a former teacher, I didn't think that transportation was going to become too important for me. Living at the council, being chair of this committee, I know transportation is everything. So I announce in school today that if I get elected, we will have an office of transportation inside the public advocate, and I will fight to get the public advocate to have a seat at the board of the MTA. Thank you.
Okay, our very last candidate this evening, Assemblyman Michael Blake.
Hi everybody, what up, what up?
Remember, everybody, the election is February 26th, by the way, which is going to be the first day for petitions with the new primary in June. So the first day for petitions is going to be February 26th, based on the law we passed this week, assuming the governor signs it.
Well, that was
They won't even know who won the.
I don't think
Yeah,
they're
they're
going to.
gonna, yeah, that's.
Or you can make sure you elect me, and we can do it by a wide enough margin that no one runs again. So I mean, we can make this very easy. Let's say, good evening, everybody. Good evening, everybody. It is great to be back at Hillcrest. We were here, of course, for the club dinner a few weeks ago, and so for those that I'm meeting for the first time, I know many times. Oh, my head down, forgive me. My name is Michael Blake. I am a third-term assembly member for the South Bronx. So I'm a Yankees fan, don't hold that against me. It's okay. Okay. Yankees fans, we'll all come together. We'll all come together. None of us like the Red Sox, okay? Let's agree on that. Okay. All right, there we go. And, I come to you as a candidate for public advocate, and for many reasons. Very briefly, who am I? I'm the son of immigrants. My family's from Jamaica. I was born here in the States. I'm the youngest of 4 boys. My mother, for 40 years, worked at a manufacturing plant in Englewood, New Jersey. Breast cancer survivor. Took 2 buses to get to work. Our oldest just retired from the Army, 29 years of service to the country. My daddy was a janitor. He mopped hospital room floors at St. Barnabas Hospital. Proud member of 1199 SEIU. We come here as someone who, I went to PS 79, 118, and DeWitt Clinton High Schools, public schools K through 12. And so any educators in the room, Jonathan Kozel wrote about Savage and Equality Children American Schools. I was there at that time. Overcame a heart murmur, was in the NICU 3.5 weeks, and had a near fatal car accident in 2001. I fell asleep at the wheel at Northwestern University. And if it wasn't for the luggage in the car that weighed the car down in the hands of God, I would have gone over the cliff that day in Pennsylvania. I come to you as someone who had the opportunity to work for President Obama for 6.5 years. I worked on both campaigns.